Well, Inky looks a little bit different this week.
Yeah,
You can't tell, but Inky is 6'4" now. Absolute unit.
And white.
And white. He's a white man with a beard.
yeah, he did the whole
Times are changing.
It is a shame that he's not here. I was hoping that you guys could reconnect and also grow North Penn's market share on this call, since it's pretty.
Gotta grow North Penn's market share.
Always need
Gotta
to.
represent. That's all right. Another time.
But congratulations, Matt. I think you're
Thank you.
first guest that we've had on, right?
Oh no! Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
All right,
High bar.
I'll take
Big
it.
shoes to fill here.
Big shoes. There's no shoes to fill, I guess, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
I was
crazy.
gonna make
Yeah.
it.
I hope you're barefoot.
I'm setting the
That's
bar.
what
I mean, you have Inky shoes to fill, but he usually
That
says
is
like
true.
2 sentences.
I can do that. I can do about
So,
2. I've already done that.
I think, as I said, I think you've already done that. So,
I'm done. I'm out.
All right, we've got enough
So,
content. See you guys next week.
Jack, you plugging the website here?
Yeah, got to do our due diligence.
Always.
Of
course.
Absolutely.
is this
Another
always
sale.
here?
Another
I kind of
sale.
want to buy this. This seems like an awesome album. What do we got on here?
So I don't know if it was always on there. I don't know if you refreshed it. It looks new. I know
He puts
there was,
stuff on there.
yeah, and I know there was an issue. It looked like there was an issue last week where, like, if you went to shop, it only showed 6 albums, but I think he troubleshot that with them.
Yeah.
There you
We're
go.
back.
It's looking good.
Wow. Waiting for Columbus only
Free
$5.
Springsteen for $6. There you go.
These are some serious deals.
For the
people.
Gold Rush.
Yeah, you
$8
got to get on this
Early
site.
Black Friday.
Multiple pages.
3 pages.
This
There
is
we go.
incredible.
Wow.
Well, I'll let our viewers go and check out the next 2 pages. People love it.
Yeah, if you don't know how to get to the site,
You
it's
suck.
linked in the description. And what's the URL? Pull up the URL. I think it's just WhosRecords.com.
It's just WhosRecords.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna just quickly put it on headphones because I want to listen to the album while we're doing this because I love this album.
It's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Do you actually love this album, or is that
Yeah.
just your way of saying you've only listened to it once and you need to do homework as we go?
It could definitely come off as that, but no. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do love this album.
EP.
Any
Album.
album, yeah.
Whatever.
That's pretty much the whole album is just some guitar riff, some distortion.
You nailed it. All right.
Yeah,
The weird warbly vocals.
All right, we're good.
So, Jar
Uh,
of Flies. I guess this came up in 2 ways. We had wanted to do a grunge album, and by we I mean Seamus, and and Timken also kind of shouted this out. Jack, didn't you say you were with him at the time?
I guess so. For those of you who don't know Timken, Henry Timken is my former freshman year roommate, and then sophomore year and senior year, and then after college. So I'm really good friends who Nigel and James know. And I guess he suggested this album. I don't remember him doing that. I texted him when we started this. I was like, "Hey, did you recommend this?" I just started listening. It's like, "Yeah, I love that album." And then he sent me like 6 other albums I need to listen to. So I got some homework to do myself.
Good guy, Tim.
Um,
Yeah, he hit us up on Instagram and said you guys should do
Gotcha.
Jar of Flies, and I was like, well, I think I can do that for you.
Got to give the people what they want, and they want.
Yeah,
a lot.
about 8 weeks late, but
Here.
it's been sitting on that. It's been sitting on that.
Been looking real good on that
for a
chart.
while at the bottom.
yeah. I like that we got to it before we got to Jefferson Airplane.
Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah.
Well, the longer it sits, it's like marinating. Once we actually listen to it, it's top of S, easy.
It's a good way to put it. We'll see if it lives up. But so super excited for this album. This is one that I actually have a little bit of background on. Not because I read the Wikipedia, I don't do that, but I have they're just one of those bands that I like a lot and like enough to have listened to content with them, specifically with Jerry Cantrell, the lead singer, lead guitarist and co-lead vocals, still kind of co-lead vocals, but he's been since Lane Staley died in whatever it was, 96 or 2002. I forget.
2002, yeah.
2002.
I don't know if Kurt Cobain was 96 maybe, and that's what I'm thinking of, but
94.
Yeah, I think it was a little earlier.
thinking of someone.
I think his
Yes.
girlfriend
Yeah.
passed away in like 96. Like so his girlfriend, because he just went like down a rabbit hole after that. I think.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
I think
you might be right.
that was when the MTV Unplugged one came out too. That was the last stuff they ever did. After that, they never performed again. So
Yeah, and even that performance was the first time in like a couple years, right?
yeah, I think it was.
And you
Yeah.
can see that Lane's in pretty rough shape when during that performance. And obviously, this album touches on some concepts that really a lot of grunge bands touch on. But we can kind of get into that when we get into the material. But yeah, so Jerry Cantrell, just the established frontman of this band, and if it wasn't established or in the Lane Staley era, because he was co-lead vocals with Lane, and Lane had that archetypal grunge, powerful voice similar to like the Eddie Vedder style, maybe Chris Cornell, Scott Weiland. Love it or hate it, again, I mean, they all kind of fall under the same umbrella. It's become evident after his passing and in the William Duvall era. So, and I saw an interview, I forget if it was Gibson or whatever YouTube channel had it, and it was just him speaking in self-contained questions for like an hour, which was super compelling and definitely. Matt, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I saw that video. It's a cool video.
Yeah, and so
Hey, for the people who don't know, the audience, what do you mean speaking in self-contained questions?
do you not know what I mean when I say that?
No, I have no idea what you mean.
Gotcha. So I can see how that'd be misleading. So it's an interview, but it's not like a camera angle where you can see the interviewer and Jerry Cantrell, and you can hear him. You can hear him asking questions and hear him answering. It's just him answering questions in a self-contained way. So it's very interesting in that sense. But I don't even know where I was going with all that background.
Just a dude talking, basically. Cool dude talking for like an hour.
Gotcha.
But in like his house or something.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I'll be pulling excerpts from that. But in terms of the background for this album, Jar of Flies, one of the things that I had come across previously was just the name itself. It originates from a science experiment that Cantrell did with two jars of flies. One jar was overfed and one jar was underfed, and the overfed population flourished at first and then kind of withered from overpopulation, whereas the jar that experienced scarcity survived for a lot longer and in a much more stable population. So and then this might have actually come from the Wikipedia. The only comment after that was from the drummer, where he was like, yeah, there's some kind of meaning in there.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, yeah, that's about what my interpretation of that would be.
Yeah, the meaning is the cool cover art.
Yeah. There's more meaning than a lot of other albums have. So
speaking of cover art, something cool I found was the artist of the cover who took the pictures of the cover art. He posted like last year on the 25th anniversary. I'll share the other tab. Just some outtakes he had from the cover art when he took the picture. He just threw like a bunch of different like gels on the camera to get this really weird effect on it. And he had some like other cool kids that he had in there and like different angles and jars and stuff.
Such cool.
And yeah, like he was reading, like, my assistant made multiple trips to the street to gather hundreds of flies with a butterfly net and some horse stables. The flies kept dying. The kid kept complaining. My assistant kept gathering more flies. The album was nominated for a Grammy for Best Recording Package, and I still have the jars. And he doesn't remember the kids' names.
that's awesome.
But
Yeah, the kid was
pretty cool picks.
I'm sure the kid knows
doesn't
who
matter.
he is.
The kid probably knows.
He would have
who it
came out
is.
if he wanted to be known.
Exactly.
It's like the Nevermind cover, man. It's like another one of those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder if we got any money for that.
What is
Yeah.
with grunge albums and
Three kids on covers, man.
you
Kid.
I said there's so many dark
Yeah,
themes in
one of
these
the darkest
albums.
It's
themes.
like Catcher in the Rye as a genre of music.
Mhm. Nice.
That's definitely an
Look at
insult.
us. Look at us getting.
Yeah, that book's
That's
trash,
poetic.
but
An album by an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, though. Read that, listen to grunge music, dude. Jeez.
Oh yeah.
That
We're
could be
making
bad.
a shoot John
Yeah,
Murphy.
that'll change your ads on YouTube and Google for a long time.
So Matt, did Facelift and what is the other album? Dirt.
Yeah.
Did they come before this?
Yeah, so Facelift was first. That was 89. Oh, 89 or 90. So that was like one of the first grunge albums. That was a little bit around when like Nirvana made their first album, Soundgarden made their first album or two. So that was like early doors of grunge. And it has a lot more of like a metal influence to it. When you listen to it, it's a lot more like of a hard rock metal influence. Especially,
Yeah, I thought that might have been a hard one for the palette.
Yeah, 90. Yeah, it's not like crazy hard. I mean, Man in the Box is like the main song from it that a lot of people probably heard. But yeah, it just has a lot more metal influence. It's just more like rock. There's no acoustics, not even like a sniff of acoustics, I think, in that album. And then that obviously did well. And then they made Dirt, which is probably like the one most people are familiar with, in 92, like later in 92. And they released Sap, which is like an EP, sort of a little bit shorter than this, in early 92. And that was actually some acoustics. I think that was like their first acoustic stuff. Yeah, which had Chris Cornell on it too. Another main grunge singer.
And Mark Arm from I think Mudhoney.
Yeah. So
but yeah, so I just bring those up because like he mentions like the metal influence. So I know that Jar of Flies was basically them doing that, going from metal and then like grunge. Dirt is definitely like a iconic grunge album, and then they just kind of pulled out some more acoustic instruments on some of these songs. And I know Jerry Cantrell in that interview was talking about how some of their fans were like pissed off when they played it live. They were like, what is this? Like, this isn't what we came here for. But I thought it was a good album for us to do by them because it's probably the most palatable. I mean, maybe some of the William Duvall like post Lane era stuff, but that's not really like their bread and butter. That's not what they're known for.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
You got to hear Lane Staley's voice.
Yeah.
And on that note,
well, actually, I know a little bit more about the album.
Yeah, I can fill in a little more as well. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so just a couple things that I read were, I think they were touring off Dirt at the time, right before recording this, and they like just came back from Lollapalooza, and they were homeless, like they didn't have a house because they got evicted while they were touring, which is crazy. So they decided to just stay in, I don't know what studio it was off the top of my head.
I think it was a London Bridge studio or something.
Yeah, London Bridge.
Okay. In Seattle. And they just stayed there for a week, and the whole album was recorded, I think, in a week, 7 days.
Written and recorded in a week.
Yeah, just jamming.
Which,
just like South Park.
Oh, yeah.
Bit of spoilers, but you can tell.
Many great albums just recorded in such a short time.
Yeah, Nigel, I agree.
Yeah. But I think, what was the other thing? A lot of the songs themselves are like finished in 1 to 2 takes and recorded in a day. I mean, there's 7 songs here. It took them 7 days roughly to record, so that makes sense. But you hear it, you can definitely hear it in the album that, these aren't the cleanest takes. And when they went to the studio, they told, I think, the label or maybe the producer they were working with that they had like an album already kind of like figured out, or they were working on one. And when they actually got there, they were like, yeah, we don't have anything. Like, we're gonna first of all, we're gonna live here because we don't have a place to live and we have nothing. So we're starting from scratch. But what a great backstory.
Yeah, very grunge of them.
Very grungy.
Yeah.
Quite the way to go.
Dude.
And you're like a huge band, and then you're just like show up like sleeping bags and stuff. Just dudes like we don't have anything.
Yeah.
So Jerry Cantrell spoke about that in that interview too, because he mentioned that like they didn't have a place to live. They knew a guy who knew the guy who ran the place. It was like I think it had like 40 rooms for people to record in, which is pretty sick. And they obviously got to take advantage of that. But like, and they would like, I think they would like work the front desk or let people in, or I don't know, maybe they would like be roadies in the studios when they were working there. But he said that they were paid in like basically like these meal stamps, and like each meal stamp counted for like one frozen dinner, and that was like they got like one of those a day pretty much, and that was just how they were paid. So good example of like the ends that some of these aspiring musicians go to like break through. You know what I mean? Like you don't have it is a cool story. I will try my best not to recount the entire hour-long interview in this episode, but a cool story that he told was like Van Halen gave him a guitar and he was like, you don't have to do this. And Eddie was like, no, I want to. Like when I was coming up, I was broke. I couldn't afford shit. No one gave me anything. He was like, now I'm rich. Everybody gives me stuff for free. So they had nothing.
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool come up. This is also the first EP ever, like period, to top the Billboard 200.
Yeah,
it was at the top of the charts. It was the first EP to ever do that.
Yeah, next one was the Jay-Z Linkin Park EP. Gotta shout that out. I think it's sick.
Next album?
Next album. Get it on the list. That thing rules. I think it's awesome. But yeah,
Jack, did you have more backstory on this?
No, Nigel covered what I was going to say.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted it to be fun. Well, Seamus, let's hear it. Give us your take. Yeah, no, you've been eager.
I have been eager. I've been really eager. I feel like it's been a while since I got to like nominate an album. So yeah, I would say it's one that's just grown on me. I think like my exposure to Alice in Chains was Man in a Box, probably from Rock Band. My exposure to all of rock music, basically, it can be credited to Rock Band and Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
So that'd be again like Man in a Box, and then it was probably like Wood, and then Bones. The very heavy grunge, again like archetypal type of grunge songs, which I liked. But honestly, like I probably listened to those the least of Alice in Chains, and ever since I started listening to some of the Duval stuff, I've been mixing that in more a lot. But I would say this album is definitely my favorite of theirs. I think, despite the fact that it's a little bit different than maybe what they're known for, at least what they got famous for, I think it still incorporates a lot of the elements that the rest of the music cover. So for example, like in some of that heavier music you hear, obviously it's like centered, or the focal point is like the overdriven guitar, maybe drop D, and Jerry's dropping these awesome, riff lord type of riffs on there, like metal type of sound. And I think you hear that in like Nutshell and I Stay Away, obviously. Nutshell more so in the solo. You hear his lead playing come out, and then I Stay Away. There's that riff. I don't know. I guess it'd be the verse part, but not the part with the chimey acoustic 12-string. And so that being said, you have the heavier parts, and you have some of that dark tone too. You have a lot of the dark tone that is again apparent in grunge, but you also have, like in this album, when they introduced the acoustic instrumentation, even though some of their fans at the time were so used to other stuff, didn't like hearing that introduced. I think that stuff in isolation is beautiful. And then when you pair it with this like dark, overdriven, heavy riffage from the lead parts on these, I think it just creates this really awesome like juxtaposition between dark and light. And I think that like the I Stay Away music video, which I shared on our Instagram story, kind of is like another kind of element of that weird, creepy sound darkness. So, I mean, to be honest, I could probably go on about all 7 of these songs in great detail. So I don't know if anybody else wants to share their observations before I put everything out there.
I mean, it definitely has like almost like a spooky feeling to it. I feel like I remember when I was like younger, a lot of my rock music experience came from like my dad playing stuff on like CDs and stuff in the car. I remember like we had the only, I think it was like the Alice in Chains self-titled CD, which was the one after this in like 95. It had like a dog with 3 legs on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this cover's a little spooky. All the covers, you look at them, this dirt one's like this like girl and like the dirt sort of like coming out of it. It's like they're all like weird. And with Lane Staley's voice, obviously, so you hear that on Rotten Apple like right away. And if you've never heard it, it is sort of like almost not spooky, but just a little bit like not off-putting. It's just so much different. And I think it's just like a little bit of an oddball compared to a lot of the other grunge albums. And yeah, but I think it's great because of it. And I think the acoustic thing just really embraces it.
What's that, Dan?
The uniqueness definitely works in his favor.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the albums we've rated highly have very distinct kind of vocal styles. You just listen to Remain in Light with David Byrne, like very distinct vocal. Geddy Lee at the top, very distinct vocals. Like Pink Floyd, you know, Roger Waters and David Gilmour sound the same, but you know it's Pink Floyd. Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely stuck out to me when I was younger, and it's always just had that like sort of sentimental feeling. And it's funny, like I was listening to it in the car today, coming back from work, and just like trying to, especially like I Stay Away with like the chorus on that, just the way he like yells out that chorus, and he does that on so many songs. But it's like I try and sing along to so much music I listen to, and then like I listen to that, and I was like, nope. I was like, nah, it's not gonna happen, dude.
Yeah.
It's like just listening to it, I'm like, this guy's like a crazy voice. Like if I sing, it's just gonna sound so stupid. Just like the raspiness, but like also just like so much weight to it at the same time. This is kind of wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, the vocals, there's Lane by himself again, so that's like the example of the grunge lead singer. Already compared him to like Vedder, Chris Cornell, Kurt Cobain, very powerful singers. I've called this video out before, but Man in the Box Live, 1990 or 92. Matt, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy.
When they come out of the solo and go into that last chorus, like the power that he hits as he goes, he like there's
he just goes nuts.
Yeah, and but then there's also the harmonies too, which I've talked about on here before. I think in the Mount Rushmore episode, if for nothing else, where when Lane and Jerry are singing, it sometimes sounds like one voice.
Yeah, it does.
And I've also actually been listening to the Beatles a lot lately, which is kind of a funny mood of a back and forth between the Beatles and Alice in Chains. But I've compared it before to John and Paul and how they also will sing at the same time sometimes, and you're not really sure, is it just one of them? Is it both of them? And they just complement each other so well.
Yeah,
I think these two are a really good example of that, and a good example of a band that's got 2 singers that it can draw from, compared to bands where there's only ever one lead singer.
Yeah, I think it's the only grunge band, at least the main grunge band, that had like any sort of harmony in singing. I think all the other ones was just like the lead singer just kind of on his own, just going for it. And obviously they always
like
hold their own.
Vocals, maybe.
Yeah, maybe some backup vocals, but like especially when on like Don't Follow, like Jerry Cantrell sings the first 2 verses, and then Lane comes in. Like, I mean, that was him even on his own. But yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For sure.
Also saw these guys live. I don't know if anyone's seen them live before.
That's
probably
awesome.
not. But I saw him last year, and obviously Lane's not there, but William Duvall's a beast, total killer. And he's been, I don't know when they picked him up. I think it was like late 2000s, like 2008. I could be totally off on that. But he's the man. I mean, he's an amazing voice. And I mean, obviously the other grunge bands, Nirvana, haven't ever, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam's the only one still around, but Alice in Chains still holding on with another singer, but they sounded great. I think the only song they played from this album though was, I think they played No Excuses.
That's cool.
The first 3 you can't really play because it's so Lane centric.
I have heard them play Nutshell live. I mean, like on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how I missed them when they came to town. I had no idea that they were here.
Yeah, I was texting you about it.
You posted something on your story or something like that, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
What's going on here?
Yeah, it was at the BB&T Pavilion, one in Camden.
Yeah, not my favorite venue to go to.
Yeah, not my favorite either.
I would have made the trip.
Got a lot of great stories there.
Oh yeah, it's a place. It was actually interesting. It was Bush that went first. I don't know if you guys are familiar much with Bush. No, they're like kind of like a more post grunge later.
W?
Yeah, George W. Bush, the band. I think they were a little bit after the grunge movement. They're like 95. They made their first album. And then Breaking Benjamin, which I'm not a big fan of, they went second. Pennsylvania band, so represent PA. And then Alice in Chains went. So it was an interesting group. It's always funny because those BB&T Pavilion concerts, always a few bands. So you always get like just a range of people there. It's great for people watching. Yeah,
especially to show.
Interesting.
Imagine.
Yeah, the Breaking Benjamin fans were showing out.
I would go Justice here, Diary of Jane, for sure.
That was rocking. I heard that. I was like, all right, here we go. Like the whole
That's the classic.
I was like, I don't know, but that was rocking. I can give them that. That was at the end. They did good. But like me and my cousins were like, none of us were really.
Yeah, you're not there for that.
No, you're not there for that. But yeah, it was a great show. They sounded great. They've been touring, I think, the U.S. for like the past year or so. So still going on.
Sweet.
No, I could speak very long-windedly about this album, but like you and I were hanging out on Monday, and we've been sitting on this for probably at least a week now, which we've made a habit of. And I know you had some things you wanted to say. I had some things I wanted to say. We were like, well, we can't do this now. We have to see
I appreciate that.
What you have to say.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I'll start off with the basics. Favorite song in the album? That's hard. I think I Stay Away is probably the one I know the best. But Rotten Apple's an epic song, I think. And it's long and it's good long, not played out, annoying long. So I think I'll go with Rotten Apple. I love the guitar riffs throughout the album. Nutshell has some really good riffs. And I mean, just in general, the electric guitar sound that they have in this album is pretty great. I don't think that there's a bad song on the album. I think it's pretty consistently good throughout. Like you guys mentioned earlier, the vocals are pretty killer. Lane is, I mean, I don't know a ton of Alice in Chains music, but I mean, he fits in with the other well-known elite grunge singers at the time, right? I think, in my personal opinion, Eddie Vedder's the best of them. And then Kurt Cobain has, certain things he can do with his feeling and voice that, eclipse those other singers in some way. But this guy's on the same level, and I think the harmony, like you mentioned, also. It is very almost like trance-like the way that their voices phase with each other, because it does sound very. I mean, it sounds like you're listening to one person with a wild-sounding voice, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a clear delineation, like, oh, this guy's singing, and you have your backup singer with them. Like, no, they're both carrying the song together vocally, or the album vocally. Oh, okay. So, got the positive stuff out of the way. The album is not well recorded, and it really bothers the hell out of me. Like right off the bat in Rotten Apple, like there are clear takes where they just like mess up. And after I could tell that this must have been like rushed, even before like reading and finding out that this entire album was done in like, I think what I read is like 1 to 2 takes, maybe 3 takes for some of these parts. And I could definitely tell because there's parts where the guitar is just out of step with the rest of the song. The drums, like, and as a drummer primarily, like that shit annoys me to no end. Because like if you're playing and then you play a fill and your fill's the wrong tempo, like it just throws off everything. And as someone who naturally, like, since playing the drums, like, I play along in a way, not necessarily like I'm playing everything, but like I'm thinking in that rhythm, and then when it's thrown off because the drummer didn't fill in the proper cadence, like, it just completely takes me out of it. And maybe that's a nitpicky thing, but there's definitely multiple instances throughout the album where the guitar and the drums, I don't know about the bass, but definitely the percussive elements and the guitar, like, they just miss. You know what I mean? Like, as well, I mentioned this earlier in the group chat in the week. The acoustic, there's some buzzy strings. All right, there's a lot of poorly fretted chords in this album, and grunge is kind of like a sloppy style. Like, that's kind of how the image of it, but it's not really sloppy music. Like, all the grunge bands, all the good grunge bands play really well. Like, for example, Dave Grohl is one of the best drummers of all time, right? He's not playing sloppily. And something, some people criticize Kurt Cobain's playing as being sloppy, but it wasn't rhythmically sloppy. And if you mute a string, like, it's not as big of a deal as if you like hit it and it sounds wrong or it's buzzing, or, I mean, you can just pick all of that up in the mic or the pickups if it's an electric guitar. And I definitely felt a lot of that in this album, which, definitely goes into the rating of it as an album. How much care was put into it? How much recording? How much perfection? How much attention to detail did they put into this? And I definitely felt that it was lacking there, because there's simple things. This is in the 90s. This isn't the 60s where you're using tape and you can't go back and re-record it, right? Like, I don't know. It sounds like they were pretty broke at the time, and they were somewhat rushed. But I don't see an excuse for certain parts to be as bad as they were. And I think, for me, if simply re-recording the song makes the song better, then you didn't do good enough, right? Without having to like add anything or rewrite parts. If you just played a better take and the album would be better, then I take issue with that. I think as well, the bass is awesome on this album. Great bass riffs. Some of them play along with the guitar, some of them don't. I forget which song it is. I think it might be Don't Follow. I think it intros with like a bass riff. Is it Don't Follow or Swing on This? I'm not sure, but
I think Swing on This.
Swing on this.
Swing on This. Yeah. It was at the L.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, Don't Follow was the guitar. Yeah, that's right. Swing on This.
But like, they just scooped out the mids completely, so you almost can't even tell whether it's a bass or a guitar. You just get the highs and then the fat low end of the bass, and I just love the way it sounds. It sounds sick. I mean, it fits with the whole vibe of the album. I think the cover art aligns with the theme of the album, like the dark, moody coloring and the weird like imagery with the jar of flies, and there's some kind of symbolism with the importance of scarce. I don't know. somebody can write an AP English paper on that. Not going to be me. But yeah, I think a lot of elements are super cohesive with this album. The vocals kill it. The guitar sound kills it. Obviously, I spoke my piece as far as the actual playing goes. I like the mix of the acoustic elements. It's also very different from the other grunge coming out at this time. I think the contemporary Nirvana album was In Utero, and what did Soundgarden have out most recently at this time? Do you know?
That was probably Super Unknown. I think
Super Unknown.
yeah, which is more definitely more polished than the other two, but pretty straightforward.
And 10 by Pearl Jam. All of them are pretty different from this, so they definitely found their own lane. And I like the metal side of grunge, but I also like the more acoustic. I think No Excuses and maybe Whale and Wasp have the cello in there. I love the cello. Fantastic instrument. Really glad that they threw that in there. But I did like this album. I thought it was pretty good. I like where it sits. I like how it differentiates itself from other Seattle, grunge bands at the time. But there were those couple things that I took away. Newest song, I'll add to, like, I love Whale and Wasp. I think that's a great sounding song. And I think the weakest song is maybe Don't Follow.
I can fuck Inki.
Wait, what would you say your favorite was, Nigel?
My favorite is Rotten Apple. My favorite that like my newly introduced song, I guess, is like Whale and Wasp. I guess underrated is how we go with it, but Whale and Wasp I think is a sick song too.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the albums we've been having kind of have that like interlude instrumental song in like the second side of the album. Kind of like that REO album had one. I feel like another album had one recently. I kind of like. I've never really noticed that with albums. I think it's a pretty common trend, and I really like it. And I think that's a Whale and Wasp is like a crazy song. Yeah. I feel like that song kind of encapsulates this album pretty well. Just that eerie. This album's kind of like if Courage the Cowardly Dog was an album. It's like
definitely see that.
Really weird.
That's hilarious.
Like, this Cartoon Network in general, to be honest. But
I must think like Edgar Allan Poe if he was like a grunge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Dark, melancholic, hypnotic.
Yeah, exactly. All the above. And I think Whale and Wasp kind of has that like the most, that eerie, unsettling feeling. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of similar with all the songs in the album. They kind of take like in the second half of like almost every song, they kind of transition into more of a, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying happier mood, but I don't know, like a brighter mood. Like you hear at the end of Whale and Wasp, it kind of sounds like a resolution of sorts. Like there's clearly some sort of like struggle at the beginning of the song, and then the end of the song is like kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like that they do that a lot in every single one of these songs. There's kind of like an arc to either the music or the lyrics or something that goes throughout each song. And I think Whale and Wasp is a really clear example of that. Cool song.
For sure. If I could jump in real quick just to add to that.
Yeah, sorry, I totally took over.
No, I mean I'm pretty much done. Like you can go out right after this. I just want to add that like I'm glad you pointed that out because a lot of good music, follows some kind of formatting, whether the artist knew what they were doing at the time. And I brought it up before in the context of writing an essay, but I won't use that analogy this time because no one likes that. But like when you're writing a song, and some of these songs are like that, even if they don't have words, it's in the tension of the chords. Is you start off with like you're in the moment with a conflict, and then you get this like exposition, like what is the situation, and then you get like a resolution at the end. And a lot of the songs do follow that kind of format musically, in the way that they evolve throughout, the chorus and the verse and the bridge and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely glad you brought it up because it was definitely a cool part of this album.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, yeah, I can go. Yeah, I've been listening to this like so much. I feel like I'm addicted to this album. I when we first started, I listened to it, and then I took a couple days off, and then I went back to it. So kind of had it like stuck in the back of my head. I feel like I've probably listened to this at least like 3 or 4 times a day for the past like 5 or so days. And not that it's like my say again.
I said that's probably more than me.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like every album we've been doing recently, I've been listening to it like more and more and more. Like when we first started this, I was doing like one listen. And maybe it's just because I'm like enjoying what we're doing a lot more now, or like I don't know, whatever it is, but I've been listening to it more and more to really try to like get prepared for this and also like understand the album. I really like when they're like 30-minute albums because it's pretty easy to sit down and listen to it. And this is a good example of that. And I've just been like on a repeat, and I can't believe I've never heard any of this before. I feel like I know a lot of music from this era. I think I probably fall more in like the Jane's Addiction side of the 90s, a little bit like less grungy and more whatever of the 90s. But I'm glad I was introduced to this because I really enjoy it. There's a lot of highlights. I would probably agree with Nigel that before like reading anything about how it was produced, there's definitely like a sense of like something seems kind of rushed, or like I don't know. It definitely had that sense. It was like, I feel like if they took 6 months to make this, or like came back to it in 6 months, they would make a lot of changes for the better. And not that it's bad in its current state, but it probably like could be even better with some continuity in songs, and well, really that's about it. Continuity in songs. It just seems like, and like production value, which I don't really have an ear for like Nigel does, but I can kind of see that. But some of the songs just don't make a ton of sense, and it's not like a bad thing. It's more like, shit, I kind of wanted to keep hearing that. Like with I Stay Away, it starts out like I love it at the beginning, and then it's a completely different song halfway through, and it gets into almost like an arena rock song at the end with like the cello or whatever. I don't know. It's like a violin or something at the end, or viola. It's really cool, but it's a completely different song. I'm like, damn, I wish they stayed with what they were doing at the beginning. But they went into this completely other direction, and I was like, I wish you stayed with it because I wanted to keep hearing that and see where you went with it. But they just like drifted out and did something completely different, which, I'm sure they had a reason to do, but maybe if they went back to it in 6 months, they might have changed that. And it seems like an interesting decision to make. That being said, I think I Stay Away is an awesome song. Nigel, I agree with you. Rotten Apple's like a long, cool song. Cool way to intro into this album. I think it's like such a song of this time. And then same with Nutshell. Like it's a pretty legendary song, pretty famous. Super like, I don't know, it's a great song. Not much else to say. I think my favorite song off the album is No Excuses. Like that is, I don't even know what to say. It's just like, I can't stop listening to that song. It's so, so good. Definitely my favorite by far. And I've already added like this entire album to my ski playlist because it's like definitely some good ski music for sure.
Nice.
That's cool. I can see that would not be my immediate train of thought in terms of like the mood from hearing this, but that I can see that being really cool.
Yeah,
ski playlist is melancholy skiing.
I was ripping.
My playlist is all over the place. But yeah, Nigel.
I was just gonna say, like, I was driving on Lincoln Drive today, taking my dad to the airport, playing this, and I just wanted to, like, when the guitar comes in, I'm just taking these turns, just like, like.
Yeah, I mean, you like with I Stay Away, you get like intense, like you're going hard, like whatever, and then No Excuses. It's more like you get out of I Stay Away and you get into No Excuses, and it's like a breather. Like I Stay Away is such an intense song, and then No Excuses is just like beautiful, and like a great acoustic riff in. Like I love it. And then Whale and Wasp is like, I feel like Whale and Wasp is how you would feel if you were like fiending for heroin. And then the second half is you get your heroin. And that's what that song sounds like to me, which is probably what it's about.
Yeah. I think you nailed it.
I think the back
Probably,
like four songs, 3 songs are all about heroin.
Yeah. See, okay, there you go. Yeah, makes total sense and fits everything that I think I know about Alice in Chains and the Seattle in the 90s. Fun fact, my parents lived in Seattle in the 90s, and my mom, she went to the first Starbucks. Like, I guess she lived near it, and she asked, like, "Hey, I this seems like a great business. I want to open a franchise of this." And they said, "No, we're not doing that. We're just going to stay as one."
No.
Dude, if my mom did that, I probably wouldn't be on this podcast right now. But we'd all be in our own studio, make our own album.
You would be where you are actually behind you.
Yeah,
it'll be a real thing.
That's not real.
No, very nice. But Don't Follow, kind of weird. I don't know I think it fits the least out of every song on this album. I think it's like fun. It seems like, I don't know. It's just like a happier song, I guess. I don't really have much to say about it. But Swing on This seems like a post-apocalyptic, like square dance or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Like it's or like a swing dance or something. It seems like zombies in post-apocalyptic world having like a dance. It's such a weird song, and it fits this album so well with just like the weirdness and the like creepy, gross feeling of it, and it's super cool and like a fun ending to the song, and on like a high note. So yeah, all in all, really, really cool album. Like I was like pleasantly surprised. I didn't really think I'd like it, or like did not really care for it at all, but I can't stop listening to it, and that's going to continue for sure.
Nice.
Sweet. Definitely an easy album to listen to.
Yeah.
Definitely easy.
Especially with the length. Length makes it
Yeah.
easy. I mean, I personally like grunge a lot, but it's just very, very consumable.
I think the endings too help, like how you guys were mentioning it, like instrumentally, the endings sort of pick up a little bit at the end of each song. Like it doesn't like drop, because if it did, it would just be like super depressing. And I think it just sort of gives like that life and that like replayability, where it's like, all right,
Yeah,
leaves you like, all right, feeling all right after it. Doesn't totally beat you down.
Especially to end on swing on this, but then if you have it on a loop to go back into Rotten Apple, brings you right back into it. It's kind of an interesting loop, same as some of the other ones we've talked about.
It's a great loop. Literally just happened.
That's got to be really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just dudes talking for a little bit.
Dan, what say you?
Bring it home.
Yeah. I'm not like the biggest Alice in Chains fan. Never really listened to him. But I did know like the MTV Unplugged. Like my dad and sister were big fans of that.
Your dad's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, he's got good taste. We were talking about this album like yesterday, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Jar of Flies. That's the acoustic one, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is." He was like, "That's a good one."
He knows.
Yeah, I agree. Like I know the MTV Unplugged has like Nutshell at least, which is like an iconic song. So I'd listen to it like occasionally growing up, probably, and listen to it. I don't know how many times in Seamus's basement, probably sitting exactly where he is on that couch.
That all checks out.
Yeah, but it's great. Like I think like we talked about how it's like pretty dark, pretty melancholic. Like a lot of it is like Rotten Apple kind of starts and feels very hypnotic. Like it has a dark feel on the album. But it kind of uses a song like Don't Follow to its advantage, you know, like still keeping it pretty bright. We talk about how it can still have the lower moments, but still feel really strong and like boisterous and like pretty gorgeous, and like the instrumentation. And even like Lane Staley's vocal, like I Stay Away, like when he's screaming on that, like you're bopping. It's great. But to go against the grain, yeah, I really like the song Don't Follow. I guess that's because I'm more like acoustic oriented and like a finger picking kind of guitar player, and really enjoy like Lindsey Buckingham, for example, my like dark horse in the Rushmore. Love finger picking, and I think Jerry Cantrell does a great job here. And the harmonica is such a sick addition on that song. Yeah, the harmonica paired with the vocals is like pretty powerful in my opinion. But yeah, was very happily listening to this album. Like I agree that with Nigel that it's like pretty digestible. Like it kind of makes me curious to go check out like the other Alice in Chains records. Like I know Man in a Box clearly, but don't know much else at all. So it definitely kind of like pulls me in a little bit. Like I'm most likely going to check out some of that stuff soon once I stop listening to the Talking Heads.
That could take a while,
dude.
Yeah, I'm stuck on them right now.
It's hard to get away.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think there's a bad song on this album. Yeah, like I think if I kind of lost it on Swing on this. Like as much as the bass is pretty impressive, I kind of like didn't really get into that kind of like honky tonk sound. But like the electric guitar really kind of like saves that song for me. I think it's pretty sick. But Rotten Apple would definitely be my like follow up for best song. Like I think it's a great long song, amazing opener, really hypnotic. And it really makes me want to listen to the whole album, like regardless of like what's coming, you know.
For sure.
And then Waylon Wasp was also a cool instrumental. I also agree with Jack that like having a sneaky instrumental on like the B side of an album, like I just end up liking it more often than not. Yeah, and No Excuses has like a really cool syncopated like drum opening, like that's really cool, and it's definitely like probably like I don't know, maybe one of the more poppy or like brighter songs. I would feel like definitely one I would save and continue to listen to. But I could say that for a bunch of these songs. But mostly, I really like Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell singing on this album. Like all of you guys probably brought it up at some points that they work really well together. You know, it's like one of the like iconic duos. You know, it's like Simon and Garfunkel. Two just like perfectly matched voices that hit this. Like they really nail the grungy aspect. Like they really do fit in with some of the greats. Like being the only pair of vocalists. And they really drive it home for me. Like I think Inki had mentioned in the chat that you may not have been super impressed with like the instrumentation overall. And I see you can say that. Like Nigel brought up a lot of their production issues. Definitely could have used some better takes. Like I'm sure it could have been like a lot more. It really works for what it is. It is grunge. But their vocals are on point. Like I'm curious if those were also done in like 1 or 2 takes. If they were both in like the room together singing into one mic. But it just really works well here.
Definitely. I think just to clarify my take earlier, I don't think "Don't Follow" is a bad song. I think it's the weakest link. I think it's
same here.
For the rest of the album, it doesn't really fit. But I do like the song.
Same. I like swing on this, but there's got to be. I like this one the least.
Yeah.
Plus, it barely has drums in it, which I'm curious though, Dan. Like, what is your take on the guitar playing? I guess the actual guitar playing, and then also the fact that there's a lot of buzzy strings. I know I keep bringing it up. I mean, especially in that song. What don't follow? Yeah.
Yeah.
In that song, there's a lot of buzzy strings. I'm curious about your take on the guitar playing on the album.
Yeah, I guess it's really kind of like a matter of preference, because if there's one thing that I've listened to plenty, it's like live acoustic albums. Like it's something my dad's a big fan of, and like even seeing like some musicians live, it's just kind of like a raw feeling. Like I think it can definitely take away from the overall sound. Like if you're just like really smashing on strings, it can really just like pull you out of like the whole tone that the song is going for. It just sticks out like a sore thumb. But I don't know. I think like in the context of grunge and like what I know about Alice in Chains, like MTV Unplugged, especially with what they're going for acoustically, it doesn't necessarily take away, and it like kind of works in their favor. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely get it as a taste thing. Some people are not going to care at all, and
yeah,
you're right. Like, I think I had mentioned
last time for Remain in Light, like David Burns, he's the rhythm guitarist for the band. Like his style on a lot of those songs is just like very fast, like rhythm guitar strumming, like a lot of muted like chords. Which like some people would be like, what are you even doing? You're just playing like an F chord for a whole song, like, and you're just strumming. But I think that it can all like work in the context of a song, and like it works in their favor, like being the Talking Heads and the sound they created, and like they made a masterful acoustic sound here. Like really kind of like open room raw sound, which is why it transitioned super well into like an MTV Unplugged,
Yeah, for sure. And this is all 12 string. Seamus,
What, the acoustic in this?
Yeah.
It's safe to say most of it is, and I think all of it is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is in nutshell, but it sounds like it might be. But they definitely incorporated a lot. I was going to ask you, Nige, what you thought of Sean Kinney as a drummer. I never thought that he had the most interesting fills or the most compelling grooves, and I'm speaking about this as a non-drummer, but I thought that there was an interesting mix of like hand percussion mixed in with their grooves, and I'm obviously speaking, flawed production qualities aside. I feel like, and I'm speaking about this from how I've seen him play before. I feel like he plays in a way that's a little bit less of a strike on the drum, and it's more of almost like that jazz style where you can hear the movements a little bit swifter. I've heard instructors in YouTube videos, maybe one, I think Neil Peart,
yes,
had referenced it before too, how he had a drumming coach who had kind of explained that to him. I think Joe McGuth had told that to me too, how there was like a theory, a style.
Speaking of people we should have on this podcast.
Yeah.
I know.
That'd be interesting.
I know. I think that'd be cool. That would be like a 2-hour long episode. So.
That's the Steely Dan episode, I think.
Bonus episode.
Oh, Steely Dan episode. Dude,
Steely Dan episode might be like a Friday night. Like, let's all just like
ramble.
We talk about
Jameis.
3 albums.
Yeah,
we could do it when I'm in Philly the first week of December.
Yeah, down. Let me think about
Something
that.
Something to think about it.
But yeah, no, sorry. I answered for you.
Yeah, the drumming. Okay, so right off the bat, like when I started listening to this album, I started jumping around to other grunge in the era, right? So like In Utero and 10 are at least my two favorite songs within that like 2-year span, or albums in that 2-year span. And right off the bat, when I started listening to this, I was like, wow, the drums sound kind of weird. And it's in the production, the mixing, like they're not super big, I guess. Like they hit and you can hear them, but like if you listen to those other two albums, like the kick drum is huge, there's a lot of low end, like the snare takes up a big space within the album, and these, I mean, Dave Grohl and Nirvana's previous drummers, like they just have a very big drum sound. It's a huge emphasis on in that music. And I mean, you described it perfectly. Like it is way more jazzy in this album. Like he's riding on the ride cymbal for a lot of these songs, and he's just tapping it. He switched. I think in the first song in Rotten Apple, which is one of the fills that I hate because it could have been so great. I think he's playing like normal eighth notes, and then he switches to triplets. And he fucks up the time while doing the fill. But like it is very jazzy. Like he's just playing around the kit, tapping on things. Like, but there's other albums. I think we mentioned possibly doing "Dummy" by Portishead the other week, and on that album, like it's not that style, but they're also playing the drums very like softly.
Yeah,
but they're like compressed to hell. Yeah, they're compressed to hell, so it sounds huge and loud, and it sounds like he's wailing on the drums. But in this album,
like trip hop,
like that.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what you would call it.
We'll talk about it when we do that album.
Yeah. But yeah, in this album, it feels like the drum kit is less of a drum kit and more just percussion in the song, if that makes any sense. Because I'm a big fan of like hand percussion in songs, like toms and bongos and shakers and all that stuff. I think it adds a lot of texture, and I think a lot of what the drums do in this album is that they carry a backbeat decently. As I mentioned, like some of it's out of time, so that might be why they aren't mixed as strongly, or as like they're not as much emphasis is put on the drums, because they're not quite on the beat the way you'd want them to. So if they were as loud as something like in Nirvana, like it would probably bother more than just me as a drummer, But I thought that it was definitely unique for the other grunge bands at the time. A lot of rock drummers have their roots in jazz, or were taught by jazz drummers and stuff like that, because that's where rock came from, was jazz and blues and stuff like that. But I mean, I enjoyed the drumming on the album. I just wish it was, I just wish it was recorded more
Need
cleanly.
a couple more takes, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know we've already gone for an hour, but I can just, if you don't mind, do a speed run of some of my takes on this, because I didn't really do a full breakdown. And just like some of the points that I wanted to make were like, some of the emotions that you hear in this. Like the word despair comes to mind when you hear Nutshell. And like I've never heard a song depicted in such a way, because you could listen to like Dust in the Wind or Landslide. I feel like those are songs that I and again, as a non-lyric guy, I could just be missing the actual point or inspiration behind those. But I feel like those are songs that come on and I always think like, wow, these sound super depressing, and there's obviously a similar theme in something like Nutshell. But if I'm ever going through some kind of mood or phase where I need that, it's never like a Landslide or Dust in the Wind. This just has that feeling, but still has that kind of that kick-ass electric guitar sound that would, again, kind of be right what you would expect me to want to hear. So Nutshell has that despair quality to it, but the solo is awesome, and I love the electric guitar tone in that. And then speaking of guitar tone, you have that concept in I Stay Away that I've talked about with Boston, where you've got the string instruments and the way you layer like an acoustic 12 string with this heavy overdriven guitar. But then this goes a step further and introduces that orchestral symphonic string sound, which you guys have kind of touched on in other songs. And this, Nigel said when we first started listening to this, like the strings are so busy in this album. I think that's a great example. I think I Stay Away is definitely my favorite song on here. And that 12-string electric acoustic guitar intro is something that it's probably the hardest riff that I've learned to play on guitar. And it's just so addicting. There's other parts of the guitar. There's other guitar parts in the song that I just play that intro because it just sounds so cool. And and on that note too, like I've spoke about it, it's pretty clear, like Alice in Chains are one of my favorite bands. Not really because there's like a virtuoso quality to Inki's point, like in terms of the instrumentation. I don't think that like Jerry Cantrell never really enters the conversation of like top 20 greatest guitarists in rock. But it's the harmony, the vocal harmonies, the melody, and the layering of the string instruments that I think is so compelling. And for me, I just love that guitar sound. And I know like 10 Alice in Chains songs on guitar, and it's partially because they're really not that complex in a lot of cases. Not the rhythms, anyways. He plays some really cool and melodic leads.
How are they tuned?
Half step down. Or drop D, like I Stay Away is drop D, so that's a big part of the reason why I keep my guitar tuned down half a step. Nirvana also tuned down half a step for most of their songs. So the other thing I wanted to say about I Stay Away, I remember the first time I heard it, that guitar solo, the tone of it, does that remind anyone else of the guitar solo in Want It Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi?
Kind of does,
Okay,
yeah.
you're
I'm listening to it right now. Yeah,
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like listen to it and you'll
Yeah,
hear it.
I love that song.
It's so good.
That's like one of my favorite songs.
And but yeah, that song's uniquely creepy is how I wrote it down here, which we touched on. No Excuses is something I heard first in the Unplugged show. And so that hand percussion, I don't know if that's Sean Kinney playing it and striking it with his drumsticks, or if they have someone else that they brought into the studio to play the hand percussion, but that's really cool in the Unplugged, and the scenery in the Unplugged always is what sets the mood for that song, because the Unplugged is like a dimly lit stage lit by pillar candles, and it's just this really super chill environment. So Whale and Wasp is one that I found when listening to this. That had really fallen off my radar from previous times I've listened, and definitely love that. That's definitely like an underrated song for me on here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like awesome use of whatever, orchestral strings are used in that. Swing on This or Don't Follow, probably my least favorite, but like Don't Follow is a really cool song. Like that's not me hating on it at all. It's a bit of a different flavor on this. Can definitely see why it's Inki's most liked song. It's probably the most docile on here. That's kind of a joke that I have with Inki. I used to describe his taste in music as docile. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, I mean, this album obviously means a lot to me. I'm still honestly thinking about where I'd rank it, but it's clear that he's one of my favorite songwriters, and I would say that maybe it's just me instinctively defending the album, but the recording flaws weigh a little less heavy for me. Mostly just because in my listening experience, they don't break the fourth wall. It's not like I hear them and I think, God, that just took me out of the song because I'm thinking about how they produced it. But I pay attention to that stuff a little less than Nigel. But on the whole, I definitely love the album. So
Nice.
Does anyone else think of like, I mean, this, I guess, whole genre, but especially like Nutshell and I Stay Away. These songs were on like early 2000s, like WWE games and Madden games and skating games. Like that's all I think about when I listen to them.
Oh, 100%.
If I booted up a
Probably
video game and
Tony Hawk.
Nutshell came on, dude, I don't know what I would think, dude. That'd be so depressing. If that came
I
on.
put the controller down and have to think
Yeah, I'd
about
be like,
life.
that's bad, dude.
Like
No,
definitely,
I think of like
they were on
ska
those
and
games.
stuff like that because of like
Really?
Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Well, mostly just
Some,
that. Mostly
like
just
NHL.
Definitely like
Yeah.
Rooster was on some of those games, and maybe that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, but just reminds me of early
Man in the
2000s
Box,
games.
WWE, that'd get me going.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely some harder
Hell
stuff.
in the Cell.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's exact. Yeah,
That is a man in a box.
It's a Man in the Box. Oh,
Um,
man.
Matt, anything to add, or should we get to ranking it?
No, I won't hold up too long. I think you guys all made good points. I didn't even like notice any of the stuff that Nigel said about the drums, and that's not because Nigel's got the ear for it, and I totally don't. I don't know anything about drums, but definitely like the buzzier guitar. I feel like Dan said, it's sort of it doesn't bother me as much because it's sort of I don't know. This is definitely like a warmer album, and I think Alice in Chains in general is a little bit warmer than like a Soundgarden, like a Nirvana, at least to me. And I think that also comes in with the drumming a little bit because it's not as aggressive. It's just a little cozier, a little more moody.
Mhm.
And so I think the buzzier guitar sort of creates a little more of like a warmth. Like it's not as like super nitpicky clean. But that's just obviously personal listening opinion. But yeah, and I love Don't Follow too. I'm on that side of the wall, I guess. I just like the second half. It's just like not like a country song, but it's just like it sort of sounds like Lane Staley singing over a country song back in the '90s. And it's pretty sick. And then Jerry singing is cool because he really doesn't sing that much on his own throughout their discography, at least when Lane's around.
They
But
both get to shine on that song.
yeah, it's sweet. And Swing on This is probably my least favorite. But yeah, the last three, like you said, Whale and Wasp sounds like doing heroin, and the last two songs are just totally about heroin. Like Don't Follow is sort of like Lane just talking about like it's Jerry singing first about it, and then Lane just sort of rambles on at the end and just like don't like basically kind of saying like don't do it. But he's like, I'm just going down this path, guys. Like he's like saying like,
It's
alienating
awesome, but
people.
don't do it.
Yeah. And it sounds awesome. It makes
I
it
know we
sound
just
pretty
made a
awesome.
great case for it, but
Yeah.
definitely don't
But don't do it, Jerry.
Yeah, look how sick this sounds. And then Swing on This is just him just saying like, guys, I'm fine. It's like mom, dad. It's like talks about his mom like checking him, dad checking in, like all that's just like I'm skinny, but I'm fine. I'm asleep, but I'm fine. I'm awake. All this stuff.
I mean, his story ended well.
Yeah, it ended well.
Yeah,
And yeah, it is
definitely
sort
was
of, it seems like a bit of a downturn for him, like in his life a little bit. I mean, they didn't perform, I don't think, hardly that much after this live. I know they did MTV, and that was it. And he sort of was like literally like non-existent for the next like 6 years until he passed away. So when you like have like all the context of that in his life and you listen to that, you're like, oh. But yeah. It definitely has some cool parts. Like No Excuses, total like pop grunge banger. At least to me, definitely has like more upbeat and the drums stick out. But yeah, obviously I love it. That's I guess why I'm here. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love it. But yeah, that's all I got. I won't hold you guys up. Let her rip.
Let's do it.
Oh, here we go.
For the
Who's taking
record,
lead?
I want to hear where Matt ranks this, but we may only be able to use him as a tiebreaker since every other album on here has been within the 5 of us.
You know, I'll just sit and silently judge. That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I do every time I watch. That's what charts are for. That's why this tier list is so popular, man.
Controversy.
Yeah, controversy, man. It's great content.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. Where do you guys think
where it's going?
I think I would rank it. Okay.
Go ahead, Jack.
Match.
Go ahead. No.
Okay.
Take the lead.
I think I would rank it higher if it weren't done in a week. Like, and the reason it's I love it, but like I just think, man, what if they just like fixed all these little things? And maybe I'm missing the point of grunge in general. But if they fixed all these things that I have issues with, which I think they totally would have, and like the things that Nigel has called out, like it could have been that much better. And that's the only thing holding me back from putting it in S is of like what it could have been. So I would put it somewhere in A, and I'm not going to say where because I'm not fully sure yet. And I'll let someone else go.
Gotcha.
All right, that's fair. I'm happy to go. Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed the album. I think it's a good album. I think it could have been a lot better if they fixed all those little things. You know, like if you're the rhythm section, you have to play the right rhythm. If you're the guitarist or one of the guitarists, you have to play the strings on the guitar, not the frets. And that to me is like a big thing. Someone who's familiar with the the side of production on the music, like that's important to me, and it shows that you care about the music that you're making. And I think like musically and thematically, what they put together here is pretty unique and pretty special. The last 2 songs are a bit of a stretch, but I still think that they're good songs. And the vibe that they get out of this is insane, especially with their vocals. Like nothing else sounds like this. But there's other things holding me back, and I'm thinking high B, possibly top of B.
Fair. And I think Inki said, I just looked at it. What did he say? Low B?
Mid B, low B.
Yeah.
That's a good thing he's not here.
Yeah. Also, the other grunge albums that I listened to this week, like, were just, in my opinion, for my taste, just better.
Have you listened to Soundgarden?
I know a couple songs on the one album that has Black Hole Sun.
If you haven't listened to Super Unknown on that album, which is what it's called, 100% check that one out.
I think I do know that song.
You're gonna want to like go to the gym or run through a wall or something, but it's a good time.
Well, I go to the gym and listen to audiobooks, so maybe not for me.
That is wild.
That is crazy, dude.
Seamus, what song did you say?
Super Unknown.
Yeah, the title track.
Because everybody knows Black Hole Sun,
Yeah.
but the Super Unknown is what the album's named after, and it's a really good representation of what that album is in terms of the production. Now, as you talk about grunge drummers, and Matt Cameron is really cool. So I think that I feel like you would appreciate that album. I'm kind of glad I didn't nominate it for this because it's an hour long. So
Yeah, it's long.
it's like I like it, but I could probably only listen to it 2 or 3 times in a week. As someone who likes it, so.
Dude, I was listening to. I just want to cut it. Sorry for cutting you off. But I was listening to, a couple other albums outside of like grunge, but just in the 90s era for like maybe something we could do. And dude, a lot of those albums are like an hour, 2 hours long. I think I was looking at the deluxe version of Siamese Dreams by Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah,
bro. The deluxe version has 96 songs.
Oh yeah, I think Melancholy and Infinite Sadness is the second album. The blue cover, that thing that's crazy. If you go on Spotify, dude, it's just like scroll.
Well, like deluxe has like all the live versions and stuff like that, right?
Then a lot of
Yeah,
B-sides
Outtakes and
are
shit.
pretty
But-
sick too.
But some of them do have like 20 songs in the original, like 25 songs in the original cut of the album, which is
Different media
A lot.
allows for different, different possibilities.
true.
Dan, do you have an idea where you put it?
Yeah, I think I really like the album. I'm like a fan of the like raw acoustic sound. Really like the vocals. As much as there's like definitely the production elements that could be improved, I don't think it holds this album back at all. I would definitely put it in A tier, and I think I would put it above Blood Sugar Sex Magic. To be honest, that's where I'd put it.
Yeah,
Behind
I'm
Bear.
struggling because I think it's better than Men at Work, but I don't think it's better than Radiohead because I think Men at Work is rated too high. So it's really hard
Not
for me
a
to figure out.
chance.
And I say this
I'm a
every
big
week,
Men at Work
but
guy.
I love that album, but it's not better than Dire Straits, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, or Radiohead.
In like 5 episodes, we got to do a reconfigure.
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
tier list and
That's going to be a
change.
heated one.
Make that like the
Um,
Christmas one.
Yeah,
Everyone just
exactly.
gets bombed. Just start yelling at each other.
Eggnog.
That's real content. right
Um,
there.
New year, new list.
I'd probably agree with you, Dan. I'd put it around there.
I would probably say high A. Definitely. I mean, definitely not an S. I mean, it means that much to me. But yeah, there are production flaws. I already said I don't focus on those as much, which maybe is just bias, but it's also because I'm like Matt said, like listening to it on my drive home from work today, and I'm not sitting there thinking like, ooh, heard, that didn't sound good. And
Mhm.
and that's just the way I listen, because I mean, to Nigel's point, there are some definite flaws, and it's a shame that they didn't just go back and do it, because I think the way that we are assessing an album it is in a very high light, saying like this is a work of art, and it's a shame just because it's like you're putting this out into the world. Nobody. I mean, I don't know the full like scope that goes into like a remaster, but like bands don't really go back and like completely re-record. And I mean, they can't do that because Lane's
Yeah.
no longer
And
alive.
that's why
so
Taylor Swift is so special.
Yeah. That's why she's the
Mhm.
GOAT.
Yup.
Mhm.
I'm
Top of
being that was sarcasm. But
What, you didn't listen to the 1989 re-release, dude?
not yet, dude. Oh my
Taylor's cut.
When's Taylor getting on the chart? That's the main question. So I'm asking on
Amen.
behalf of the viewers.
that could end up being contentious.
Dude, I think it would be a fun episode.
Oh,
be a-
I think
God.
that,
Man.
that sad cowboy down there is looking pretty lonely.
Oh,
So,
man.
Native American.
So I'm saying high A. I feel like it's probably going low A. Mid
I
to
think
low.
what Dan said, I think, is a pretty good spot in front of Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, where if you're looking at it relative to how you feel about the rest of the things, that A is a tricky one for me, because I like Men at Work a lot. That might be the only one in that category that I like more. I mean, I don't even like him more, but that I would rate higher, with a heavy dose of subjectivity and bias.
And it's music, after all. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Where would you put this, Matt?
I was hoping you were going to ask. No, I'd probably put it right around there. I think that's good. I think Remain Light's definitely the one there that I like more than that on the A list.
Nice.
But I've talked to Seamus about this, and I feel like he might have knew I was going to say it. London Calling is my favorite album on this chart, and
Nice.
it has a tiny gap. It has a gap, I think, even. Actually, maybe Remain Light's probably second, and then the Boston album. But so putting
Man
it,
and Light is an ass for sure.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
a
why
bang.
it's sitting down there.
I don't know.
When,
I mean,
when
it's
Nigel said
leading
it was
a-
the best album we've listened to, I smiled. I did a big smile.
I had a feeling Matt agreed to join just so he could
Just so I
advocate
could
for
say
London Calling.
I just had to.
Yeah.
I've been waiting. I've been lurking
I
for like over
appreciate
an hour now.
it should not be in B.
But Seamus also did when they were talking about it, it's like listening to it as a record, and like it is long. It has a ton of songs. Like you guys were mentioning about long albums. So, and this is 30 minutes, easy to listen to, and it's great. So, yeah, I like where it is.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think it's a decent spot for it. And the whole album length thing, at least my perspective on it, I only care if it's an hour long for the sake of the podcast. Because like listening to an hour long album 4 times in a week is 4 hours. You know, so it's a lot more to deal with. In general, I don't think that should dictate whether an album is good, but
yeah, I feel like we should stick to shorter albums for this. I like what we're doing with that. Makes for better discussion.
yeah.
I mean,
And I
it's
think
just
we
the
should-
concept of 20 songs. It's like you get 20 chances to put out good songs. You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
like if you go 9 for 9, that's extremely impressive.
9 super high quality songs.
Yeah,
None of these were
Cool.
super high quality, but
Tragic.
I mean that's the reality. None of
Yeah,
these
from
were high.
a production
Yeah,
standpoint,
no,
I would agree
definitely.
with you.
I don't think any of
No.
the songs are maybe S tier, but you know.
But I think if you look at it musically and conceptually,
Oh, yeah,
the way
no,
it was
it's-
wrty, you know.
It's super.
I think Nigel's just making a joke.
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
I will say everything else on A, just except for blood, sugar, sex, magic. Sorry, I get those words mixed up sometimes. Every other song in that A tier is masterfully recorded. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm okay with it being at the very bottom, but you know, it's you know, it's one of those steps. You know what I mean? You have to hit you have to check all the boxes if you want to make it to, you know, high A, S tier.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd say we talk to Inki about a next album, and we'll figure that out. But Matt, thanks for joining.
Always a pleasure.
Glad you were able to come and discuss.
I hope the shoes
Fun having guests.
have been filled. I really
I think
appreciate coming out to
You
talk.
said
Congrats on
more
being the
words
first
than Inky
guest.
has in every episode we've recorded. So
All right, sweet. I feel like I didn't even talk that much, so I'll take that. That works for me.
you got
awesome.
any suggestions for next week?
Oh, tons.
Oh, yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Nothing. I miss. No, go ahead.
I don't think he was asking. I have no say. I have no.
No,
say.
I was asking you, Matt, but I mean,
I
it's
thought
for
he was
everyone.
asking the group. And I was like,
Suggestion,
wait for Inki,
yeah.
but I was asking you. Yeah. Shoot.
I don't know.
I mean-
I love the '90s, so that's all I'll say.
Cool.
I'm just gonna
Noted.
throw it out there. I've had a real hankering for Steely Dan lately, but that can just be a teaser. We can figure it out in the group chat.
Look at my hat. I'd rather be listening to Steely
Nice.
Dan.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Sweet. All
Steely
right.
Dan S
Noodle.
tier confirmed.
Yep.
I also just wanted to mention Seamus. I looked like Rolling Stone released like a top 250 guitarist list that my dad told me about. Andy Summers is number 250. And I was like, all right, I don't need to look at this list anymore.
That's classic Rolling Stone.
I was like, yep, this would be trash.
Never seen a
Was
good
Kurt
Rolling Stone.
Cobain
list.
number 7?
Yeah.
Haven't done Police yet either, dude. Damn.
I know. I was thinking maybe it's an Adam Mondada.
We just
Or,
love mid
debut,
album.
to be honest. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out.
Figure it out.
Also, Tame Impala. Don't forget.
Oh, ho, ho. What's up,
Yeah.
man?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking with Nigel about that. But
Oh,
you guys,
don't
there's
get me started.
no 2010s albums, are there? I don't think. No.
Yeah, is that
American
classic
Idiot's
rock?
probably the most.
Man. One day.
American Idiot's probably the most recent release we've done, right?
Yeah, and that one was garbage.
Yeah.
Not worth listening to. So we should probably listen to something better in that era.
We could do the
Whatever.
big day by chance.
There we go.
I'm down to stick.
That's a
I'm
banger.
down to stay in the '90s for another week and do something not grunge. That's a little different. Hey, I got
Why
you.
not?
Damn,
You're twisting it.
for sure. Psh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
Beast.
So
Any thoughts?
Oh,
Nice.
Ears are up, dude. He's in.
Nice.
Cool.
it's down.
All right, lads.
All right. Thanks for joining us, man.
wow.
Yes.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you very much, boys. Until next
All
time.
right.
Adios.
Everyone have
Peace.
a good one.